Hello, my dears. This is Annette of AnnetteLeonard.com, back again with Chronic Wellness. Thanks for joining me. As many of you know, I got COVID not too long ago, and I thought over the next couple of weeks I would talk to you a bit more in depth about that experience. Um, I am a firm believer that we are still in a global pandemic and that anyone who can avoid getting COVID, if you haven't already gotten it, or even if you have, should avoid getting it. It's a gnarly disease and has a range of effects, some of which we know, some of which we don't know, some of which we aren't going to know for a long time. Many of you asked, how did you get COVID? And so I thought I'd start there. My sister-in-law traveled to Eugene, which is my home, from Alaska for our niece's 18th birthday. And 2 days later, we went to my mother-in-law's house, which is where she and my niece were staying, in order to celebrate my niece's birthday. And we were indoors, and I wore 2 masks. Because of my lung disease, I can't breathe through either an N95 or a KN95 mask. So I was wearing paper mask and a cloth mask. And we were there for, I don't know, probably 2 hours. And the next day, she took a home test and figured out that she had COVID. So we were on alert. Now, she was not wearing a mask. And I think my wife and my nephew were the only other people wearing a mask. And interestingly, no one else in the environment, even days later, had come down with COVID. So here's an example of, because we are suppressing my autoimmune system in order to keep me from fighting myself, because I'm on a chemotherapy agent, and I had just had a dose of Rituxan, the chemotherapy agent that is killing my immune system, 10 days prior, I feel confident that that's a big part of the reason that I came down with COVID. So 48 hours post-exposure, I got a real scratchy throat. It felt kind of like I'd been, gargling bits of glass. And we had a really big forest fire about an hour outside of town that was pretty uncontained. So our air quality was bad. And I was like, is it that? Is it just the bad air quality that's making me feel so crap? And then I started feeling really run down. So it was a Saturday night, and I took a COVID test before I went to bed, and it was negative. So I thought, well, maybe I'm in the clear. And I went to bed, and I coughed all night long. And it was, as they say, a very dry, unproductive cough. Now, I have an adjustable bed because I sleep propped up every night because of my headaches. I can't lay flat after about 4 o'clock without my head hurting worse. So I was propped up all night, and my wife was laying flat, and I just coughed all night long, just right on her. So the next day at about noon, I was feeling well worse and took another home test. And this time I tested positive, and I thought, oh dear, I've now just spent all night exposing her. So it was not too surprising when about 48 to 52 hours later, she also tested positive, unfortunately. Because I am on blood thinners from DVTs, I am not eligible to take things like Aleve or ibuprofen. I can only take like a Tylenol for managing pain or bringing down fevers. So in that first 24 to 48 hours of having COVID, it felt a lot like the worst flu I've ever had. Just extreme body aches, nausea, vomiting, high fever, ranging between 100 and 104, not continuous, and trying to keep it down with Tylenol, and just an extraordinary headache, the kind of headache that is eclipsing and inescapable, just feeling like someone has inflated something inside of my head that hurts so bad. I want to rock, I want to move, I want to run away from, but everything about that makes the pain worse. So the stiller and the quieter and the less movement I can have, the less it might hurt. And I was getting sleep in just like 60 to 90 minute segments because either the coughing or the radical congestion was starting to wake me up. And so I was so backed up in congestion in my head that I couldn't breathe. And then I was trying to mouth breathe, and I was too tired to keep my mouth open. I mean, it was just extremely crippling fatigue. And with fever up around 103, just shivering cold and then bursting into a sweat. And I remember at one point sweating through the sheets and deciding to move over to the other side of the bed, and the effort of that being so completely exhausting that I was bone weary from the effort of moving from one side of a queen size bed to the other. So that was, the first 36 hours of COVID with lots of complicating health conditions. I'll continue the journey in my next update. But of course, if you have questions about my COVID story, or if you would like to tell me some of yours, I would be really glad to hear from you. And as ever, I am so grateful for you sharing a little time and attention here with me. Until we're together again, thank you, thank you, thank you, and be well.